Muhammad Ali had faced Sonny Liston, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier. But when a 265-pound bodybuilder stood up at a public event and directed a racial slur at him, every person in that room braced for an explosion. What happened 5 seconds later left the bodybuilder gasping, and Ali hadn't thrown a single punch. It was August 22, 1974. The Sunset Room at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Los Angeles was hosting a pre-fight promotional dinner for the upcoming Rumble in the Jungle, the heavyweight championship bout between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, scheduled for October in Zaire. The room held approximately 200 people, promoters, journalists, sponsors, former fighters, and a collection of Hollywood figures whose interest in boxing ranged from genuine to purely social. Don King was there. So were several sports writers whose coverage would shape how America understood the fight. So were two former heavyweight champions. Ali was at the center table, as Ali always was in any room he entered, not because anyone arranged it that way, but because rooms organized themselves around him by a kind of natural gravity. He had been working the dinner the way he worked every public appearance, moving from table to table, delivering lines that made people laugh, making each person he spoke to feel briefly like the most important person in the building. It was a skill so natural that most people receiving it never recognized it as a skill at all. He was mid-conversation with a columnist from the Los Angeles Times, standing near the east side of the room when it happened. The man was seated at a table toward the back. His name was recorded in the incident report filed by hotel security that evening as Dale Pritchard, 31 years old, from Glendale, California. He was, by every account, an imposing physical specimen, 6'2", 265 pounds, the kind of body produced by years of dedicated lifting. He had come as the guest of a minor promoter who would spend the following weeks.
Ali looked at him. He did not move toward him. He did not raise his voice. He did not perform in any of the ways he had spent a career performing. He simply looked at him with the full and undivided attention of a man who has decided that what is in front of him deserves to be examined carefully and completely before anything else happens. 5 seconds passed. People who have never been looked at by Muhammad Ali in that particular way cannot fully appreciate what 5 seconds of it felt like. People who had stood across a ring from him and survived the experience described it afterward in terms that sounded like exaggeration, but were not. The sense of being seen through rather than at, the understanding arriving with the force of a physical blow that the man looking at you had located something true about you that you had not yet located yourself. The people nearest to Pritchard later described what happened to him during those 5 seconds in remarkably similar terms, considering they were all watching from different angles. His posture changed first, the aggressive forward lean that had accompanied the slur gradually shifting into something less certain, less committed, as if the body were quietly revising the decision the mouth had already made. His grip on his drink tightened visibly. His breathing, which several witnesses mentioned specifically and independently, became audible in the silence of the room. Not the controlled breathing of a man managing his anger, the breathing of a man whose body has begun to understand something that his mind is still catching up to. He sat down. He did not decide to sit down in any conscious sense that the people watching him could identify. He sat down the way a person sits down when their legs make the decision independently of anything happening above them. Ali watched him sit. Then he did something that the room had not anticipated and that witnesses would discuss for years afterward. He smiled. Not the performance smile, not the Ali showman smile that had charmed millions of Americans through television screens and press conferences and weigh-in ceremonies. This was something different and more precise, a smile that contained information, that communicated something specific to the man it was directed at, that managed to be simultaneously the warmest and the most unsettling expression anyone in that room had ever seen, deployed in a moment of direct confrontation. It lasted approximately 2 seconds. It said everything it needed to say. Then Ali turned back to the Los Angeles Times columnist he had been speaking with before the interruption and continued the conversation exactly where it had been cut off. The room took approximately 10 seconds to return to its previous noise level. When it did, it was different, not louder or quieter, but altered in a way that was difficult to quantify and impossible to ignore. Something had happened that everyone present understood they would be describing to other people for the rest of their lives. Don King, who was seated close enough to have seen Ali's expression clearly during all 5 seconds of it, leaned over to the journalist beside him and said, quietly, "That man just got knocked out and he's still sitting there." What Ali had done in those 5 seconds was something that the most thorough analysis of his boxing career had never fully captured, because it was not a boxing technique and it did not belong to any discipline that had a name. It was a form of attention so complete and so precise that it operated like a physical force. Every fighter who had ever stood across a ring from Muhammad Ali had described a version of the same experience, the sense that he was seeing you in a way that bypassed your defenses entirely, that he had located something true about you before you had finished deciding who you were going to be in that moment. It was the quality that made him dangerous before the first punch was ever thrown. Pritchard had aimed a weapon at Ali, and Ali had responded by simply looking at him, and in looking at him with that specific and total attention had shown him something about himself that the drink and the room and the false courage of a public slur had temporarily obscured. Something small and cold and alone that was still there when the borrowed confidence fell away. No punch could have communicated it as cleanly or as permanently. The hotel security team, which had moved toward Pritchard the moment the slur was spoken and stopped when they saw Ali's response, stood down and waited. Their supervisor, a man named Robert Castillo, who gave an interview to a Los Angeles newspaper 3 days later, said in 15 years of event security, he had never seen a potential confrontation resolve the way that one resolved.
Most of the time when something like that happens, even if it doesn't turn physical, it escalates, Castillo said. Somebody says something, somebody else responds, and it builds. It always builds. This didn't build. It ended. One man looked at another man for 5 seconds, and it was over. I don't have a better way to describe it than that. Ali was asked about the incident at his next press conference 2 days later. The question was posed carefully, the way journalists posed questions to Ali when they were uncertain how much territory they were permitted to enter. There was reportedly an incident at the Beverly Wilshire dinner, the journalist said. Would you like to address it? Ali considered the question for a moment with the expression of a man deciding how much of the truth is actually required. A man said something, Ali said, and then he sat down. He paused. That's the whole story. The journalist pressed, "Were you not angry?" Ali looked at him with an expression that carried the patience of a man who had been answering versions of this question his entire life and had long since made his peace with the fact that it would keep coming. "Of course I was angry," Ali said, "but angry was what he wanted. Angry would have made him the story. I decided to be the story." He let that sit for a moment before continuing. "The most powerful thing in the world," Ali said, "is a man who knows exactly what he could do and chooses what he will do. That man at that dinner, he wanted to see what I could do. I showed him what I would do. Those are two very different things." Dale Pritchard was asked to leave the Beverly Wilshire that evening by hotel management and was not permitted to attend any further events associated with the Rumble in the Jungle promotion. He gave no interviews and made no public statements about the incident at any point in the years that followed. 3 weeks after that dinner, Muhammad Ali traveled to Kinshasa, Zaire, and knocked out George Foreman in the 8th round in one of the greatest upsets in the history of sport. The Rumble in the Jungle became a documentary, a cultural landmark, a permanent fixture in the story of the 20th century. It proved that Ali, at 32, written off by every serious analyst in boxing, still possessed something that did not appear in any training metric or medical evaluation, something that had no name, but that everyone who witnessed it recognized immediately. The 200 people in the Sunset Room at the Beverly Wilshire on August 22, 1974, had seen a different proof of the same thing 3 weeks before Zaire. Not in a ring, not under the lights, not with a referee and a title and a crowd of 60,000, in 5 seconds of stillness and a 2-second smile in a hotel ballroom. In the choice, made in real time with every justification in the world for a different choice, to be the story instead of the reaction. Angelo Dundee, who was present that evening and who spent 20 years training the most dangerous fighter alive, was asked once what he considered Ali's greatest quality as a competitor. He thought about it for longer than people expected from a man who had watched Ali perform miracles inside a ring for 2 decades. Control, Dundee said finally. Not physical control. Any good trainer can develop physical control. The other kind. The kind that lets a man decide in the absolute worst moment exactly who he's going to be and then be exactly that person. He paused. I saw it in a hotel room in Los Angeles once. No ring, no crowd, nothing on the line. I saw it clearer there than I ever saw it in any fight he ever had. He didn't say which hotel room. Everyone who knew him knew which one he meant.
There is a particular kind of courage that produces no highlight reel and lands on no front page. It happens in the space between provocation and response, in the fraction of a second when a person decides who they are going to be. It leaves no physical evidence except in the memories of the people who were close enough to see it clearly. 200 people were close enough that August night. By every account, it stayed with them, not because of its drama, the drama lasted 5 seconds, but because of its precision. Ali had located in real time and under conditions specifically designed to make precision impossible, exactly the response that stripped the weapon of everything it needed to function. The word Pritchard used required Ali's cooperation to work. His rage, his response, his willingness to become the story the slur was trying to write. Ali declined to cooperate. What he offered instead required considerably more from him than an explosion would have. The absolute stillness of a man who knows precisely how much damage he is capable of, and has decided in 5 seconds and in front of 200 witnesses that he will not do it. Not from fear, not from weakness, because he was not interested in giving a small man a large moment at his expense. That choice was the most complete expression of who Muhammad Ali actually was. Not the Louisville Lip, not the showman, not the champion who knocked out Foreman in Zaire 3 weeks later. The man who knew exactly what he could do and chose every time what he would do. Those are 2 very different things. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Have you ever watched someone respond to hatred with something more powerful than anger? Tell us in the comments below, and ring that notification bell for more stories about the character behind the greatest legends in history.